born a simple child in a very simple home in Tombstone, Arizona. My parents, they weren't really well off. My father worked for the Bank of Bisbee, and we owned a home in Tombstone, Arizona.
Mother was born in a place called Port Hood, and the place that Daddy was born in, my father was born in, was called Guysborough. She was just a little girl then when he first met her, because he would talk about having her sit on his lap and like a baby, because he was 13 years younger than he is. And he always treated her like sort of kid gloves. He was very, very patient with her, and she needed patience. They were entirely two different personalities. Daddy was real quiet and reserved, and Mother was volatile, like Pat. Like me, I guess. I'm not volatile, though. My father was 6'2". My mother was barely 5 foot. They were married in Canada, but in 1912, April the 23rd, and they moved to Bisbee, Arizona, after they were married. Had their honeymoon in Niagara Falls. That was a big place where you had honeymoons then. When Ed and Pat and Patricia and I were all born in Bisbee at Copper Queen Hospital. And then when I don't remember, it was 1919 or 20 when we moved to Tombstone. And we lived in town for a couple of years, and then Steffi and Al Davis sold us their house out in the country. It was about a mile out past Shefflin Monument. And we lived there from 1920 or 21, I forget the exact date, till the house burned in 1926. And it was a beautiful big house, had a big, big living room, about 3 times the size of this. In fact, that's about all it was, of that great big living room. And it had indoor plumbing, which was something at that time, and acetylene lights, a huge big kitchen. Randolph was born in that house. We had there was a pull-out bed in the living room. Big bed. It was a double bed, but it wasn't a queen size, but double bed, and Randy was born in that bed on May 6, 1924. In 1926, on June 7th, Mother was baking a birthday cake for Edward, and a faulty flue or something in the kitchen caught the roof on fire, and the house went down in just a few. It didn't take very long because wasn't any enough water to fight it. And by the time the volunteer fire department from Tombstone got out there wasn't anything left. We moved into Warren, which is a suburb of Bisbee. Well, Bisbee was a kind of a big town at that time. It was a copper mining town and had 2 copper mines, the Copper Queen and the Phelps Dodge. I was in Tombstone, though, that Mother met Tom Mix. They were taking a picture there. And Mother had Randolph with her. Ida had Randolph. And they told her, probably what they told her was he would be good in pictures. So Mother kept that little idea in her mind, I guess. No, 1929, right after school ended, we moved. Mother and the 4 children moved to California. That first summer, we stayed in Venice, California, which at that time had all the canals and everything, and it was really beautiful. and we spent time down on the pier. And they had an entertainment thing there.
I can recall that Steffi came to visit us, and she had wanted to go see the ocean, and she asked my mother if she could take me along. Steffi took me down to Ocean Park, and we went on the Ocean Park pier, and as we were walking on the pier, a good-looking gentleman came up to us and said to Steffi, "What a cute little boy. Is this your boy?" And Steffi said, "No, this isn't my child. This is just a friend of ours." And he said, "Well, you know, I'm going to be putting on a road show, and I'm looking for somebody like him to put in the road show." He gave Steffi Davis his card and told her to have my mother call him at his offices. It turned out that it was Sid Grauman, and so that's how I started in the motion picture business. And it was through Sid Grauman, and he arranged for me to have an interview with Saul Lesser and some of the people, the producers over at United Artists. I know I worked with W.C. Fields in a couple of movies. And he was a great man to work with, wonderful person, and really enjoyed him.
How you doing down there? Who is that? Who is it?
What is this?
Who is it? Who is it? What are you doing? What are you doing? Like a knuckleback.
What is the idea of walking around in my nightshirt?
What's the idea of wearing a nightshirt big enough for people to walk around in? Get in your purse.
I was when my face you stepped on.
Face you stepped on. What are you, Chinese people?
You walking around stepping on people's faces. I break your throat.
What?
You. The idea, please.
Why?
Stepping on people.
Was he talking to me?
Poppy stole my mallet.
You've been creating a lot of disturbance around here this morning. You! I get you! Wait over there! Wait!
Forger, bank forger, extra, bank forger escape. Paper, mister?
Yeah. Give me all of them.
All of them?
Yeah, come on.
Gee, thanks.
Now scram. The wait here, you see. You see, I was expecting Mrs. Jackson. Just as you say.
Extra, read all about the bank forger. Paper, sir? Thanks.
In 1933, Mary Pickford was going to do her last picture, but her last picture was also to be in sound. And it was about a family, a very, very kind of like the Kennedy clan almost. And I was to be her youngest son in that movie. And so we started to work in the movie after we signed the contract with United Artists. And Mary Pickford took a really great liking to me as her youngest kid. And of course, the other members of the family, my brother and that, my sister, which were older than I was, they really took good care of me. They were really treating me like I was their younger brother. It was really like a family. And we had a great, wonderful time on that set.
Mother, do you think they'll make Daddy governor?
Governor? Why, he could be president if he wanted to be, couldn't he, Mother?
Yes, dear.
Here comes Dad now.
And Uncle Sunshine. Why do they call him Sunshine? Is that his real name, Mother?
No, dear, but he's always been sunshine to us. Come, children. Come. I'm so proud of you. I think this is the happiest moment of my life.
Well, I'm not elected yet, but my campaign manager here assures me that...
But he will be, won't he, Sunshine?
No doubt of it, ma'am, bar an accident.
What possible accident?
Oh, acts of God, sorta. Fire, flood, earthquake, and such.
Now you see, Susan, that's why they call him Sunshine.
Mommy, may we stay up for the party?
No, dear.
Well, they are.
When you're as old as Audrey and William, you may stay up for parties, too. Now, you darlings run away to bed. Go on. Audrey, William, see that they go there directly. Good night, darlings. I'll be up to tuck you in.
And my mother didn't provide the transportation for me to get to the studio. In fact, Mary Pickford sent her own chauffeur-driven limousine over to pick me up every day to bring me to the studios on the days that I worked. And she was always solicitous about my health and solicitous about whether I was getting too thin, even in those days. And she called up and said she was going to send over a nurse with the chauffeur who will bring me some Walpole's cod liver oil that Mary Pickford wanted me to drink to fatten me up a little bit. So she was really concerned. I became a member of the Screen Actors Guild. When the Screen Actors Guild first went into business in 1934, I was one of its first members. And Jane Withers lived very close to us. In fact, she lived on the same street 2 doors away. And whenever I went on an interview for any kind of a part in any movie at all, my mother used to bring Jane Withers along with us. Regardless of whether they wanted girls or not, she brought Jane Withers along because Jane Withers and my mother and Jane Withers' mother were friends, and Jane Withers was a cute little girl, and she was a good companion to me. We had a lot of fun together.
Mrs. Withers and Mother were dear friends, and if Mother couldn't take them on a call, why, Mrs. Withers would take Randy, or if Mrs. Withers couldn't take Jane, Mother would take Jane on casting calls. During the Depression, when we had barely enough food, somebody'd come knocking on the door, and Mother always found something to feed them. Even the time when we were on spaghetti, she fed them some spaghetti. And I think they marked them, had something that they must have marked the gate or something. Because I know we'd have 1 or 2 a day for a long time.
She helped formulate in me a spirit of I can do anything. There's nothing that I can't do.
hurts, Mommy. It hurts terrible when I breathe. You're not angry. I won't go swimming anymore with my clothes on.
Just get well, darling. That's all that matters. You mustn't talk now. Dr. Craig will be here in a minute, and he'll give you something to make you feel better.
No, Mommy. I don't mind being sick. I like it. I don't mind the hurt so much because I've got you all the time. You read to me and play with me, and you aren't ever cross like you are when I'm well. I wish you could be this way always.
I will be, darling. I will be. Now smile for me and tell me that you're getting better.
Sure, I'm getting better, Mom. It won't be no time at all. I'm well again.
I worked with a man, a gentle person, Will Rogers, and I worked in a movie with him called Dr. Bull, and I was a sick child in that, and I met that man on that set, and he was a warm, loving, caring person who filled the movie role to a T. This was him. I mean, he was just that kind of a person. And it turned out that Will Rogers was that type of a person in real life. And Will Rogers and I got a friendship going. We really did. And he used to call our house occasionally and talk to my mother about me and how things were going. And he was always solicitous about us. And he was always solicitous about the family. And he was really a great guy.
That's better still.
Doctor, you said if he lasted till morning, he'd be all right.
Morning, Ada. You're feeling better, aren't you? What are you doing up this time in the morning?
Let me get you a cup of hot coffee.
I wish I could. I'd love to have one.
But you've been up all night.
I know, but I'm going to be over at school. Let me use your phone, will you?
We ain't got a phone, Doctor.
Gee, you're lucky. I wish I didn't have you. I'll bring you some ice cream tomorrow. It'll be fine. Goodbye, Mother.
Bye, Doctor.
All right, come on.
Goodbye, Doctor. Honey, he said you're going to be all right now.
Good morning, darling.
Good morning, Aunt Josephine.
Good morning, Kitty.
Good morning, Lawrence. Good morning. Goodbye, Father. Goodbye, Aunt Josephine.
Goodbye, Kitty. Have a good time.
I will.
Take good care of yourself.
I will.
Goodbye, darling.
Must we have a draft, Henry? I believe in children eating their breakfast at home.
Well, Lawrence is at home.
Yes, Lawrence is at home. And why? Because the Shannons don't condescend to ask him over with Kitty.
Oh, come, Josephine. Don't imagine those foolish things.
Of course, Mrs. Shannon knows I'm penniless and Lawrence hasn't a father.
Considering that she adopted Alan Trent, who has neither a father nor a mother, and brought him all the way from Canada, that doesn't seem very likely.
Alan was her sister's son. But my poor Lawrence isn't good enough for them.
I don't want to go anyway. Not a bit, so there.
They didn't miss school because they had a studio school. And that's where he met the ones that weren't the film that he was in at that time would be at the studio school.
The schooling was provided for us on the set. Out of 8 hours a day on a set, we had to spend 3 hours a day in schooling on the set in a private area set aside for us. And teachers from the Los Angeles school system were hired by the motion picture business to be there to direct us in our studies, to make sure we kept up our studies from our regular schools. When we moved out of Orange Grove Avenue to Cherokee Avenue, I lived on Cherokee Avenue, which was about 3 blocks south of Blessed Sacrament Church, which was a Jesuit church. I met my good friend Bobby Edwards there because he lived only about 3 doors from us on Cherokee Avenue.
Randy was 2 doors south of Fountain on Cherokee, and I was 2 doors north on the same side, the west side of the street.
The one goal that my mother wasn't pushing me on was that I'd always wanted to be a priest. I became an altar boy and did my first service as an altar boy at a midnight mass one Christmas. Bobby Edwards and I used to play priest and altar boy, and I used to make host take bread, and I'd take a cookie cutter and cut the bread, and I'd crush it into what looked like a host, and I'd get some little wine things, a little wine glass, and I'd put it on my mother's dresser and put on some linens on it, and I'd put something on myself, and we'd play priest and altar boy. Of course, it was all in Latin, it had to be in Latin or it couldn't be right.
It was his idea, so over at his house then we would sometimes simulate saying Mass. He would take an ordinary size slice of white bread, and with a round cookie cutter, you got to cut a round thing out of it, and then maybe smash it more with an iron, and use Coca-Cola for wine. And there was nothing irreverent, it was quite the opposite. But kids are imitative and of things that they admire or something, and so we did that once or maybe twice at his house. I'm not sure, maybe more, and at least once in mine, I think.
A goal from my earliest youth was to want to be a priest. I believe, and I still believe, that God directs your life, that God is in your life, directing your life, and He has ideas for you. You may not always agree with them, but things that happen in your life, God has provided that to you to help you in the things that He thinks are best for you.
Mother was driving, and Randy, you didn't have seat belts at that time. Randy was sitting beside her.
And she had an accident, and I hit the windshield of the car, the dashboard, and drove up one of my front teeth up underneath my gums.
Randy was thrown into the dashboard, knocked out his 2 front teeth. And at that time, they couldn't put them back in like they can now.
So then I had to wear braces on my teeth then for about 4 years. They didn't wear braces only for a year like they do now. It took a long time. But because of the braces, I'd lost the opportunity for some, for some movie parts. But that's the way it was in the business. And There weren't a lot of movies where they needed kids with braces.
I think that ended his movie career.
This was the Lord's way of working in my life so that I didn't continue after high school with a career in the motion picture business. Then I got involved in radio business because they needed a young kid to play Tiny Tim on Christmas Carol, and so the producers of the show Christmas Carol got in touch with me and had me try out for the role of Tiny Tim on Christmas Carol with Lionel Barrymore. And so I played Tiny Tim for 3 or 4 years. I played with Lionel Barrymore at least 2 or 3 years, and with John Barrymore 1 year. We did it in front of microphones. There were no cameras. It was all done in front of microphones. But it was different. You met great people. We rehearsed the thing over and over again before we did the actual show. It was rehearsed many times. And so they wanted a live show of Christmas Carol on Christmas Eve to go along with Christmas Eve for people to see. And so we did the live show on Christmas Eve in 1934.
And there was Bob Cratchit, with at least 3 feet of comfort exclusive of the fringe hanging down before him in his threadbare clothes, darned up and brushed to look seasonable, and Tiny Tim upon his shoulder. Poor Tiny Tim. He carried a little crutch and had his limbs supported by an iron frame.
How did little Tim behave in church, Bob?
Oh, I like church, Mother. Oh, they sang the nicest hymns, and the people were so kind to me. It was such fun riding home on Daddy's shoulder.
He behaved as good as gold and better.
And I say God bless him too, Mother. And everyone.
I was doing the radio business. I was on the Shell Chateau with John Barrymore and Dick Powell. Napoleon's Barber, I remember doing that with John Barrymore. So I not only worked with John Barrymore on Christmas Carol, but also I worked with him on this Napoleon's Barber. In the days when I was in grammar school also, I did a lot of Boy Scout work. My good friend Bob Maglin was our scoutmaster, and we had a great deal of good training from him. He ended up, by the way, being the attorney that put my corporation together in 1974. Bob was an outstanding attorney. He was an outstanding citizen of Los Angeles. He was a Grand Knight of the Knights of Columbus. He was in the Knights of Columbus all of his life. He never got married.
It's interesting how these things sort of come up in your life. Something I had said here before, we're sitting right now in what is now the Jesuit residence at Santa Clara University. And when we were both Boy Scouts at Blessed Sacrament, the scoutmaster, Bob Maglin, he and the assistant, we would all save up some money, and they would rent a cattle truck and with wooden benches, and take 30 of us kids from 11 to 17 on a 2.5-week trip.
And he bought us a truck, which was I think it was about a 40-foot truck. I remember it was red, by the way, almost like an army truck. It was almost like an army truck that you see today that troops are moved in. And we had benches in it, benches going sideways along the sides and benches across. And there were about 35 or 40 of us. We went on some of the most fantastic trips you could ever imagine, camping trips. That's where I got my love of camping, was through the Boy Scouts. And we went to the World's Fair in 1936 at San Francisco. And then we stayed on the campus of Santa Clara University and camped out there. The Jesuits were behind us 100% because our school, we met at Blessed Sacrament Grammar School, so they were always behind us.
We went to Yosemite for a couple of weeks, and we swung around here at Santa Clara. There wasn't much going on during the summer. In fact, the pastor at Blessed Sacrament, Father Cornelius McCoy, who was a good friend of the Scoutmaster, had been the rector-president of Santa Clara College earlier. So he said, why don't you go around by there? And so we came by Santa Clara University, and I remember how good the the sheets felt after 2 weeks in a sleeping bag. They put us up overnight in this very building where I've been living for the last 29 years. And so my life has sort of come full circle.
The following year, Bob decided that we're really going to take a really great excursion. So we all agreed to go on a trip that was going to be the trip to end all trips as far as scouting is concerned.
We went from Hollywood to Yellowstone, and that included Bryce, Zion, Grand Canyon, Hoover Dam, Grand Tetons, the whole thing.
We went through Grand Canyon, Boulder Dam, which I took a few pictures. We went to Yellowstone. We camped out in Yellowstone.
Bob and the assistant scoutmaster, Hap Dittman, and I guess, anyway, they decided we would push on to Lake Louise, and we did. And that picture that I couldn't find, if I ever find it, I'll copy it and send it to you. But there was a picture of us, and I remember he was in it, there at Lake Louise. That's a long haul from Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When we were about 12 years old, Bob Edwards and I decided to go into the newspaper business. We decided to print our own newspaper, and my sister Patricia owned a stenographic shop. She did scripts for the studios.
She had facilities. We used to go around and get interviews from the neighbors, but they were just written interviews. And then Randy would translate them into typewriter, and his sister would take them wherever she went and would print them. And we used to sell what we called the nosy news.
We went around and got subscriptions to it, got people to want to buy it. And I don't remember, maybe 10 cents a copy or whatever it was. But we got people paid us for ads in the nosy news. They paid us 25 cents for the ads, and Bob and I both went around interviewing people about what's going on in the neighborhood. So that was what it was all about. Then, of course, after I graduated from grammar school and went to high school, I continued to work in the motion picture business to help support myself.
To Sir Bedivere, take thou therefrom my brand Excalibur, and fling him far into the middle mere. Watch what thou seest, and lightly bring me word. To him replied the bold Sir Bedivere.
Well, what did Sir Bedivere say?
That's all I was supposed to commit, sir. 10 lines.
Does anybody know what Sir Bedivere replied? We'll have to find out tomorrow.
I know what he said, sir.
Persons in Coventry do not speak after a class is dismissed.
Kind of funny about Eddie stopping where he did.
Yes, yes, it was.
It was a lot of fun, and Freddie and I got to be really good friends, and he was a really nice guy. We did Wuthering Heights. They asked us whether we could dance, and I did go to dancing school to learn how to dance the waltz for that particular movie, and I did a good job of it. And my friend David Tillotson was in it. He also lived near us. He and his mother were my mother and his mother were really good friends for many, many years. And I can remember I had gotten this little camera given to me as a gift by my mother, and I remember we were at the stage, and we all went outside, and we're outside, and I took pictures of all of them doing dancing outside.
Good evening, Ed.
I went to Loyola High School after completing Blessed Sacrament Grammar School.
Ed and Randy both went to Loyola High School, but Ed was kicked out because they asked him one time what the devil was doing, and he said, "Oh, he's keeping the home fires burning." They didn't like that, and they kicked him out of school.
When I was at Loyola High School, of course, I got involved immediately at Loyola High School in their own the publication of the school, which was the Loyalist. I got involved in that. And within a few years, I was helping edit it, and I also had a weekly column in it, which we called The Grandstand. I was in the Drama Society from the day I started in Loyola High School. In my senior year, of course, I had the leading role in the play, and that year I won the Bing Crosby Award for Thespian Award, it was called. I also won the Archdiocese of Los Angeles had a debating group, and I got involved in that and won the debating award for the year for the Archdiocese of Los Angeles. I made a letter in track, and then I decided I'd try out for the basketball team. But yeah, I was tall. I should be able to play basketball. I figured, why not? You know, so I did the basketball thing, and the first game that Coach Barnett put me into, I went running down the aisle with his basketball. Boy, I knew hey, boy, nobody can catch me. I'm tall, and I'm tall. And I made the basket. It just happens it was in the wrong end. The basket was in the wrong basket. And of course, Barnett pulled me out of the lineup then, and but he didn't want to lose me because I had a lot of friends there, you know. So I became the manager of the basketball team. I also got involved in the ROTC. In my senior year, I was given the rank of captain and given a full platoon squadron. This was comprised of about 8 platoons. Yeah, James Felt was in there too. He also had a platoon.
I didn't know that Randy was going to go into the seminary. He didn't. He apparently talked it over with Mother and Dad, with Eda and Jim, but he never, as far as I can remember, talked to me about it.
I talked to Jim and there were very few friends that I confided with about my decision to go into the Jesuits. Bob Edwards was probably one of them that I talked to about it. That was kind of hard for me to do because these guys were all going into the service, a lot of them were, and I'm thinking about going into the Jesuits. And of course, going into the Jesuits, you become military exempt. And you know, I had a strange feeling about that. But I did it because that's something I had a goal of all of my life to want to do, and the Jesuits offered me the opportunity to go in.
I got sort of interested in it, and I asked one of the priests at Blessed Sacrament. Here I am, maybe 13 years old, and I asked him how long it takes to become a Jesuit. And he was giving me the whole treatment. He says, oh, not very long, about 15 years. And I figuratively fell over on my back and said, forget that stuff, you know. And at the end of high school, he and a number of other of our classmates, like Pat Shallert, entered the novitiate.
An integral part of my life was the entering of the Jesuit order in 1943, which was the culmination of my work with the Jesuits in grammar school and high school. All of the scouting with them, all of that kind of stuff, all just keyed me in to wanting to be one of them. I want to be one like them.
I was uncertain about whether I wanted to do that, and I had, in a very circuitous way, I had put the question finally to this Father Jerry Flynn, who was the chaplain at Loyola High. And he was a big, bumptious man, and he said right away, well, the first thing you have to do, you have to want to do it more than anything else in the world. Well, that's exactly what I wasn't sure about. And so then I remember dropping him off at the high school after we had that little conversation and heading back home to Beverly Hills where we were living then, and I thought, this is a mistake. So I went out to what was then Loyola University for a brief time. There was no use going very far away because following January the 4th, I was going to be 18 and Uncle Sam would want me. So while I was out at Loyola U, actually what happened was I was in a physics lab and we were talking, some of us were lined up to check out our results with the Jesuit physics professor. And they had just been up to the novitiate at Los Gatos visiting our former classmates who had entered, among whom was Randy. And they were saying how happy these guys were. And I think that's the way God's grace reached me. I sort of felt like I'd been hit in the stomach. That, well, if they can do it, why can't I? I guess that was kind of a human way to do it. But I couldn't, I think it was grace too, because I couldn't get it out of my head. I was glad to see that photograph because it had to, that has to be when that was taken. So despite the fact that I felt bowled over and I really thought I wanted to do this, I still wasn't quite sure, and I thought I could help make up my mind if I came up here and had a look at the place. And my dad was very understanding, and it wasn't easy to get train tickets in those days. This is 1943. But he arranged for me to come up on the Lark on Saturday night to San Jose, and then I took a bus to Los Gatos. And in those days, when you traveled, you dressed up. That's why I was in a suit and tie. And so then from Los Gatos, I had to walk up to the hill, which is a pretty good walk. And I visited your dad and Pat Shallert and other people that I had graduated with. And I was glad to see that picture. And after talking to them, I remember standing on the street corner in San Jose, waiting for my bus to take me back to the train station and saying, yeah, this is what I want to do. And somehow that has stuck. If I'm a draft dodger, I'm a very old one. And within about 3 weeks, I was in. And that was slightly over 60 years ago now.
I wanted to be a Jesuit evangelist is what I wanted to be. Because I wanted to use the training I had all my life and put it to good use for the Lord's work. And so I went into there, and it was difficult. It was very hard because I had been so much in the foreground, so much, I had gotten so much applause. I had been such a ham, and people were always looking up to me and they were applauding me and doing this kind of stuff. And I wasn't getting that in the Jesuits. Instead, I was getting humility. For the first year that I was in there, it was extremely difficult to learn to be humble, to only speak when you're spoken to be quiet, because when we were in the house, we couldn't speak with each other. At table, we had to speak Latin when we wanted something at table.
I got to the novitiate on October the 8th in 43, and my mom saved a whole bunch of my first letters home. See, so there's a letter home dated October the 9th, and I give her a complete rundown of what the daily order was, and it's almost unbelievable. You know, when would you have time to go to the bathroom? It was just one thing after another, and every once in a while there was 5 minutes or 10 minutes, or I think the most was a 20-minute time where it was free time. It was maybe like Marines, I don't know. I never was a Marine, but they sure kept you busy.
We were trained to know what true poverty was, and true poverty is not being without, but being willing to be without. We gave up what we had when we went in there. I brought a typewriter in there. I gave my typewriter in. I gave my watch in.
You're doing exercise outside. You're doing housework inside, washing dishes, sweeping floors, and everything.
Those times of being in the novitiate were very hard because you had to get up every morning at 5:30 in the morning. They gave you 15 minutes to get ready, and then you had to do 45 minutes of meditation. Like there were chains. They had little spikes in them that you would put around your wrists and around your ankles to make you uncomfortable, particularly when you were when you were meditating about the Lord and His passion and the things that He went through. Believe it or not, you did self-flagellation.
It's funny. I'd never been really away from home. I was quite immature when I entered, and I expected to be homesick. I told the Master of Novices, his name was Seeliger, I told him if I wanted to go home within a month, he should hit me over the head with a bat. But I wasn't. However, I told you I entered on October the 8th, and then there was a kind of a secret that they had there. So the juniors, those are the people who had taken their first vows and now lived on the other side of the building, and they were really doing a lot of studying of the humanities. They would sneak over to the novices' side, and there were interior transoms in these rooms. We were living in things called cubicles. It'd be one room big enough for either 4 guys or 6 guys, and each person's place had a wooden wall that separated it and a curtain, but the wall didn't nearly go up to the ceiling, so you got all the pleasures of other people snoring, but you had visual privacy.
We slept in common quarters with cubicles, walls between us, but it was open above. The walls only went up about 6 feet, but the ceilings were like 10 feet.
The juniors would come over and bust out with Adeste Fideles to wake you up for midnight mass and Christmas. Well, I was, in a deep sleep, and all of a sudden, pow! And, I felt like I'd been shocked. I sat on the edge of the bed. I went, what am I doing here? That was the only time I kind of felt homesick.
In the first year that we were there, we all had to take the long retreat of the spiritual exercise of St. Ignatius of Loyola, which was 30 days, of which only 4 of those 30 days we were able to take a break from 100% silence.
Well, there are plenty of jokes. When we went up to Mount St. Michael's, and Randy was there for at least a year, there was the excitator. The bell would ring at 5. You're supposed to get up, even then, see. But then this guy would come by the rooms about 5 after 5 and open the door to make sure you're out of bed. So Pat Shallard, whom you indicated you knew him,
He's
see.
my godfather.
Oh, okay. Well, he figured out how to wire his doorknob so that when the excitator came by, he'd get 115 volts.
That's a good one.
Oh, yeah.
There were a couple things that were very interesting. One of the things was that during Lent, we'd have meetings together of the novices around the master novices in a big room, and he'd be sitting at the end, and we'd have a circle around, sitting around in a big circle, and the master novices would call out your name, and say, Brother Connolly, would you go to the center? Go to the center. So this day, Brother Connolly, that was me, was called out. I had to go into the center of the group and had to put my hands out in the form of a cross while the brothers, all of the brothers, were asked to comment upon what they saw in me, either good or bad. And so almost all of us eventually had to go through that in the novitiate. It was called exorcisium. Even the word is frightening.
Not to be outdone, I had access to some pretty good-sized firecrackers about the size of my little finger. And I figured out how to attach a firecracker to the victim's lamp cord in such a way that when he went to turn on the lamp, the firecracker would go off instead. You know, we had to keep busy somewhere or other.
So I took my solemn perpetual vows in June of 1945. And maybe it was August. I guess it was August because it was 2 years. And it was really a wonderful day. It was an exciting day for me. It really was. And they had a great big choir singing, and it was a moving day.
My sister, 5 years younger than I, Joan, got into the movies. She had a number of small parts, and that's kind of a story of its own. But the last movie she was in was this Bells of St. Mary's with Bing Crosby and Ingrid Bergman. And she played the 8th grade girl who liked it at the school and flunked on purpose so she could stay there another year because she was unhappy at home. After the Bells of St. Mary's, she didn't get any more parts and just went on and did other things.
And so during the junior years, we put on all kinds of plays. We put on, besides the regular studies, the regular curriculum, college studies that we were studying, we put on plays, Othello, Hamlet, King Lear, Macbeth. We had to do scenery and all that for all those plays. We put those all on.
In our year, it was the time to do Macbeth. Besides doing that prologue I told you about, I designed most of the scenery for this. These are all just flat canvas things. In fact, they call them flats. And I just colored them to look like rock walls. And then you change some of the decorations. You put in pillars or take away pillars, and it looks like a different place. And so that's what we did.
He was really instrumental in that. And he also helped design the scenery. He was excellent at scenery work. Jim, I could say that Jim was probably the one that did all the scenery. I mean, he was really good at it.
You know, you look at these witches here, you just laugh, but they weren't supposed to be funny.
He was Macduff.
We had to drill holes in ceiling beams to make to put up the crossbars that held the lights. We had to build a stage. We had to build curtains. I mean, the whole thing had to be done. We did all of that. That had never been done there before.
Father Silva, Randy would want to know that. Father Silva was the director of Macbeth, and he just died within the last 3 months way in his 90s, and much beloved, wonderful man.
That was a very exhilarating time, but I was growing weary.
And this is Mount St. Michael's, where we went to study philosophy.
During the days of the novitiate in the juniorate, Pat Shallert's father used to come to visit the juniorate and the novitiate because they were in the same building. He was a distributor of novitiate wines, and that's where the wines were made, was there. And of course, we picked the grapes for the wine. And they had their own winery there, and he used to be the distributor, and he'd come there, and occasionally he'd bring Rosemary, his beautiful daughter, with him, whom I knew before even went in, and he'd bring his wife with him. And I became a scholastic at Mount St. Michael's. I wrote Rosemary a number of letters, and I decided that I probably wanted to have Rosemary more than I wanted the Jesuit order.
But it's got to be a tough decision to make. You've planned your life this way. You got accustomed to the group, and you have a lot of idealism. And then to get to the point where you find it's not fitting anymore your life, it must be hard to do. I never had to do that, but I've known a lot of people who did. Pat Shallard, for example. He didn't leave till after the first year of theology, I think.
My mother was thrilled to death when I joined the Jesuit order. And to leave the order after 5 years was very, very difficult for me because of the disappointment that my mother would have when I left.
The years went winging by since she caressed me in her arms and granted me a kiss. With tender care she placed me to her breast, one babe for whom her life she would dismiss. No one but I could now have sensed love's dew that lay in that pure heart, that fount wherein I stole its throbbing, throbbing cadence grew to scintillate the hope that rests therein. Upon my breast here rests a pearl priceless as a prayer. To me this grace the Lord has leased, so that some blessed day might I address her back to God as Jesuit and priest.
To leave the order after 5 years was very, very difficult for me because of the disappointment that my mother would have when I left. It's much harder to leave something like that than it is to go in. And particularly leave before you finish what you went to do. And I knew that my mother would be terribly disappointed. But God wanted it this way. It was God's will that I leave the order.
He came to my first high mass in Good Shepherd in Beverly Hills. But I thought that was a nice thing to do.
The Lord was working in my life. He wanted me to get married. He wanted me to understand what it was to have a family, to have children, to raise children, to have to work, to have to go out and earn a living, to have to do all of these things. And then he had in mind for me then to be a priest later. I gave up the idea of proceeding with the priesthood and decided that I wanted to get married and left the order thinking I was going to marry Rosemary. But I didn't know her as well as I thought I did. It turned out that Rosemary liked to drink a lot, and my mother and sister drank a lot. My brother drank a lot, and I did not want to get involved with anybody that might be alcoholic, and I was afraid that Rosemary was headed that way, and so I realized that there are other women out there besides Rosemary. I became active in the Archdiocese of Los Angeles because I was fresh out of the Jesuits. The Jesuits had me go to Loyola University. I continued on at Loyola University in my studies there.
Well, when I was about 19 years old, I decided that I was going to find a husband. The first one I met was Tom Halley at St. Paul's Young People's Club, and he was the president of the Young People's Club there. Our Young People's Club went to meet the St. Ambrose Young People's Club, and Randy happened to be the president of that Young People's Club.
I was sent out to give a lecture one time on love and marriage to a joint session of the Young People's Clubs. And Gloria was there with her then current boyfriend.
Randy was giving a speech on love and marriage, and I liked the speech, and naturally the crowd did too, and we all applauded.
I went to this meeting and gave this talk, and Gloria was impressed. So she, after that lecture, came up to me afterwards and introduced herself, and she was, I thought she was a pretty hot little number. She had a very tight sweater, and she looked really, she looked pretty delicious as far as I was concerned.
The minute I put my eyes on him, I thought, boy, he's just the kind I need. He's tall and got broad shoulders, and he's just the type of person I was looking for. And he was educated and seemed to have a good brain with high moral values. And I was very impressed when I first saw him.
She came up to me and introduced herself to me. And
not imagining that he would come on to me. So I walked up to him and I introduced him. I gushed all over him about how much I loved his speech.
I did get her phone number, and I did get in touch with her.
And he showed an interest in me, and I was quite surprised. But he asked for my telephone number. We went out for coffee after the Young People's Club meeting, and Randy ordered coffee, and we all ordered coffee. And when it came time to pay the bill, Randy didn't have any money on him. And my date had to pay for his coffee.
Her boyfriend was a nice guy too, and we went out for coffee together afterwards. And I didn't have enough money to pay for my coffee, so she had to pay for my coffee.
We became very thick, very fast. Once we met, he used to come over to my house, and he didn't want to leave. He would be there till 2 or 3 in the morning and almost sleeping there before we'd have to kick him out to go home. And it seemed like we were going to have to get married because he wasn't getting any sleep.
Meanwhile, I dumped Rosemary, and Gloria and I became very close, and so close that it wasn't soon after that I said, well, this is the girl for me.
When I fall in love, it will be forever, or I'll never fall in love. In a restless world like this is, love is ended before it's begun, and too many moonlight kisses seem to cool in the warmth of the sun. When I give my heart, it will be completely, or I'll never give my heart. And the moment I can feel that you feel that way too is when I fall in love with you.
Things got very serious very quickly.
So she came to my club, and she managed to, I was running again for re-election as president, but she wanted me all to herself, so she went around to the ladies and got them to not vote for me. So she got me unelected as president, so she'd have me all to herself. That's a fact. You just ask her, she'll tell you that. She got me unelected.
I was born in Toledo, Ohio, and 1929, the year of the crash. My father was born in Beirut, Lebanon, and he lived there until he was 19 when he came to the United States. And he came from a big family with 8 brothers and sisters. And Lucille, my mom, came from a big family with around 10 kids in the family. She was very loving, and she loved children. She loved babies, and she was very generous, very giving. She would give you her last dollar. She would give you the shirt off her back. And she was always working and hustling and rushing around the kitchen to cook something to eat. You couldn't enter her house without getting some kind of food, delicious food to eat. And she loved to cook. So my dad became a tailor when he was just a young boy. And he had a nice little shop. Oh, and he made money, a lot of money during the war, working on Navy uniforms and things like that. He got some government contracts and was doing very well during the war. Bought properties, bought rental properties, and had apartment buildings. And his best one was a big apartment building in Santa Monica that he had for about 5 years. He was doing very well with property. He was an amazing man for not having had a high school education or college or anything like that. He was really an entrepreneur. Well, he was a lot of fun, and I understand he used to be a real jokester in the family. He used to like to crack jokes and like to have a good time and loved to party.
I was spending less time at Loyola University than I should have been. I was spending more time with Gloria. My studies were going to hell because I was really interested in this young lady.
I remember when he was going to marry her, and I remember she was very young. And I said to him, I said, "She's awfully young, Randy."
I just had to have this young lady. I mean, she was what God sent me, and I asked her to marry me, and that was all there was to it. And
I mean, your mother, a very pretty little woman, and he was determined to marry her, and he hadn't really set up anything in business yet.
I was working part-time jobs. I was working as an usher at the ball games. I was working as an usher at theater. I mean, I was doing all kinds of odd jobs to make money. And I didn't even have enough money to buy an engagement ring. In fact, I had to go borrow the money from Security Bank and have my father co-sign on the note to buy my wife's engagement ring and wedding ring.
I actually wanted to elope. I told my mother I wanted to elope and go to Las Vegas and get married because I don't like all the problems with weddings. But no, my mother insisted that we have the wedding.
And we got married on August 6th, 1949. And August 6th was a day, it's called Feast of the Transfiguration. And I was transfigured on that day. I was transfigured from just being a Jesuit and thinking I was going to devote my life to a Jesuit. I was transfigured into becoming a father and a provider and a husband. And August 6, 1949 was another key day of my life.
So we got married at St. Paul's Church, and it was a high mass, very formal, and I was very excited on the wedding day, and I was very happy and very confident that I was doing the right thing, and everybody was happy. We had a wonderful time and had a wonderful reception in the backyard, and Grandma made all the food as usual, practically killed herself to do it.
Till the end of time, long as stars are in the blue, long as there's a spring, a bird to sing, I'll go on loving you. Till the end of time, long as roses bloom in May, my love for you will grow deeper with every passing day till the wells run dry and each mountain disappears. I'll be there for you to care for you.
I was 5 years older than she was, and we thought about having kids. I had to go to work. I had to drop out of school, go to work. And Gloria was working for the Bank of America, and so I got a job with the Bank of America.
But when I first met Randy, I said I wanted to have 12 kids, and I was pretty serious at the time that I wanted 12 kids, but I never had a clue that you could have a baby every 9 months or 10 months.
We did what the church was asking us to do. We didn't use artificial birth control. We used the rhythm theory.
I was thrilled with Steve when the first one came. I thought he was the most beautiful baby in the whole world. I didn't think anyone had a prettier baby, and I was thrilled and delighted with him. And I was thrilled and delighted with Cheryl, having a boy and a girl, just what I wanted, and very happy. By about the time the third one was coming so soon, Lori, and I decided that maybe I didn't want to have 12 kids after all, because they were coming too fast and furious for me.
So we used the rhythm theory, and of course in 7.5 years had 6 of the most beautiful children in the world. Yep.
Have I told you lately that I love you? Have I told you there's no one else above you? You fill my heart with gladness, take away all my sadness, ease my troubles, that's what you do. Oh, the morning sun and all its glory greets the day with hope and comfort too. You fill my heart with laughter, take away and make it better, ease my troubles, that's what you do. There's a love that's divine, and it's yours and it's mine, like the sun. And at the end of the day, we should give thanks and pray to the one, to the one. Have I told you lately that I love you? Have I told you there's no one else above you? You fill my heart with gladness, take away all my sadness, ease my troubles, that's what you do. Oh yeah.
I had fun with the kids. I enjoyed them. I enjoyed housekeeping. Randy went into the service. He was in the reserve, and during the Korean War, they called him up.
And then the Air Force called me up, and we moved to San Bernardino. In the Air Force, I decided that I'd use some of the talents that I'd had in the past, and so I joined the Special Services Group. That's the entertainment group, and I did entertainment in the Air Force. Went about to other camps and performed.
before he had to go to Korea, he was lucky enough to get a hardship discharge because I was pregnant with Lori. And so that kept him from going and staying in the service.
My father knew a senator really well who knew the head of the Air Force, and through pull and drag, I got an honorary discharge from the Air Force. My mother died of a cerebral hemorrhage.
On the way back to Texas, I was very sick. I didn't realize at that time that I was pregnant. But when we left, it still hurts me when I think about it. Mother said, "Don't leave, don't leave. I'll never see you again." And I never did. And it still makes me want to cry. She fell and broke her leg coming out of church in Winslow. She was living in Winslow with Daddy for a while. Daddy phoned and told me not to come. And then she had a stroke on Mother's Day. And Daddy said, "No, she's doing okay, don't come." And then a couple of days later he phoned and said, "Come immediately." So Cal drove me to Sweetwater. I caught the train. It was an overnight trip. And when I got there, the next morning she had died during the night.
My father and Pat went back there. Pat went back there, and my father and Pat brought my mother out here, and we had the funeral mass at Blessed Sacrament Church.
August, Linda was born, August the 23rd. And we called my daddy, tell him couldn't get hold of him. Pat phoned and said that Daddy had died. And apparently when I'd been trying to get hold of him, he had been in the hospital.
We did the funeral here in Hollywood, and buried him in the same cemetery plot as my mother was buried in, at Holy Cross Cemetery in West LA.
I had Chris by the time we were able to get our first home, but we got a beautiful home on Havenhurst, and I was the happiest person in the world to have a nice little family and a beautiful new home.
And then about a year later, we bought our first house, which was on Havenhurst Street. We bought it for $10,000, and we borrowed the down payment from Jasper and Lucille. In 1956, we were living on Havenhurst Street in Granada Hills. And I decided, since I'd had political science and, I was really smart, knew all of the things about politics, I decided I'd take a run for city council in the city of Los Angeles. And then I went to register for the city council seat, and I asked my old friend, who loved me very much, Mary Pickford, if she would come down to the city hall and be kind of a witness for me when I was going to be registering to run for the city council. And she did. I think I spent probably about $1,500 total, and that's about how many votes I got. Well, while I was working for Foremost Dairies, I met Wayne Sigmund, and he and I both were very, very much into making money. We had heard about this home insulation and weather stripping deal, where you would go to you'd canvass the neighborhood in the afternoon and get appointments to go in and do the show for the insulation in the evenings. When we were selling in the La Crescenta area, and Cecil Tatum of the Tatum Manufacturing Company lived in La Crescenta. And I came to his house and gave him a demonstration. Cecil was very impressed. Not only did he buy the insulation, but a few days later he called up and offered me a job.
Then he found this job in sales, and he was a natural for sales. And he met Cecil Tatum and went into the sales business.
And my good friend Bob Wilson, by the way, who lived close by in Granada Hills, he and I got together. We decided we'd start the Mission Choraleers, but I'm the one that really started it. We were asked to go to various churches to perform and various halls to perform for women's clubs and men's clubs, and for various functions, civil functions. We were asked to go and perform. I think I was working with Donner Tatum at the time, selling equipment to the moving and storage industry. And we were going to various conventions every year, Gloria and I, but we were going to go to the CMSA convention, which was going to be held in Palm Springs. And I volunteered the use of the Mission Choraleers to sing at that particular convention.
When I first met you, was at a California Moving and Storage Association convention, and you were leading your choir, and I just thought you were doing a magnificent job, and so did the rest of the people. After a while, we developed a friendship, and it was a great advance for the New Haven company when you came on board as our local and then our sales manager.
I went to visit Paul, and I told Paul that Isadora Donner didn't think I was very good for this business. And I'd been in it 5 years. And so my good friend Paul Levine offered me a job then, and I started with Paul Levine on January the 1st, 1962.
And he hit it off with Paul right from the start. He really enjoyed working with him.
Life has been good for both of us. I want you to know that ever since you've left New Haven, we have missed you. The company is growing and prospering and using many of the innovations which you helped us to develop.
I got Paul into selling trucks and trailers. I got the Kentucky distributorship for him, and generally speaking, we became a very good team.
Randy started us in the truck and trailer business by having a fellow named Vern Daly make flatbed trailers for us. And from then on, it was a logical step for the company to get into Kentucky trailers and then into the power units, the bobtails. And that's where the company grew. We can honestly say that our truck and trailer division owes a debt of gratitude to you for A, pushing it, and B, keeping it on the upbeat over the years.
We were able to go to conventions, and I was invited to go to conventions, and I was very green at the time. I mean, I didn't know nothing about it. My first convention that I went to in Palm Springs, I bought myself a white cotton dress, and it was really beautiful with a little bit of black trim on around the collar and the sleeves. And I went to the convention looking like $1 million in the afternoon, and come about 6 o'clock at night, Harriet and a few of the other ladies said, "Well, what are you going to wear for tonight?" And I said, the same dress I had on all day long. Well, they loved the dress, but they all came dressed up in gowns and everything. I was so naive, I had no idea they were going to be wearing minks and gowns and everything, so I felt kind of funny. That was my first experience. But we stayed in the movie business and went to conventions, and I never made that mistake again.
I know that all the traveling that we did together for conventions was always a pleasure, especially when we could keep Kurt Ryan away from the bar. And that's pretty difficult to do for a bartender, but we always had a good time, no matter where we were.
We got to go many, many places. Gloria and I got to go to about 15, well, Gloria could go to as many as she wanted, but I went to at least 15 or 16 conventions a year.
And I got to see some of the most beautiful hotels in the world and enjoyed my travels.
We had many special friendships that developed over the years with our customers. You were the prime reason for those friendships. The friends who we have kept over the years, both as friends and as customers, were a great deal to do with the way you treated the people. And there are customers today who call up and want to know where Bishop Randy is. That makes me feel very proud.
He finally decided to start his own company, and he started Ranco. And that was a real exciting day in our lives, I thought, because we were finally going to start to become independent. I think that was the best thing he ever did, the best movie he ever made.
They claim, a local legend that is, claims that I made you a millionaire. Well, I got to tell you, I think you made me one too.
So we were together for many, many years, and our children were raised at the same time as his were raised. He had 4 children that were almost the same age of our kids, and we went to a lot of their weddings and the bar mitzvahs and all of the things that they did. And his kids called me Uncle Randy, and we were very, very good friends. And
I feel that I've been part of your family. I've been to all your happy occasions and shared them with you, been to all your sad occasions and shared those with you. And you've done the same for me. We truly had a very symbiotic relationship, and I hope that it will continue as long as you and I continue. Many, if not most, of our local competitors, people who we were dealing with, have all gone by the wayside. But Ranco's still there, New Haven is still there, and will continue for a long time to be there. New competitors have sprung up. The market is changing. The landscape is always evolving into something new. With the experience and the guidance which you've instilled upon me and my children, Jimmy, Roger, and Larry, we will prevail. And for that, we do thank you.
I made up my mind that no matter what, I didn't care what, I was going to take at least a 2-week vacation every year. I didn't care what, and we were going to get together as a family and go someplace.
Well, we used to go to Lake Tahoe every summer, usually in around July, and it used to be wonderful. That's another reason why we thought about buying a house there, because we were there every summer and everyone loved it, and we would get this big campground.
But my kids were really important in teaching them how to camp and teaching them how to set up tents and setting up a great campground was really foremost in my mind.
And he did buy a boat. It was a cabin cruiser, and he taught all the kids to water ski in the boat.
When we were camping out, I made the kids get up about 6 o'clock in the morning to go skiing, those who wanted to go skiing. And you guys really hated that. But that was the best time to go skiing because that lake Tahoe was classic.
We never had any extra money. And so I decided I was going to go get a job so I could have some money. But if I made money, I was going to try to double my money. Even if I only made $10 an hour, I was going to try to double my money in the stock market or make some money from it. So I said, if I work, we can't spend my money for living expenses. Anyway, I worked for the county for 7 years and took a 3-year deferment, and then I was able to take a retirement. So I'm still on county retirement, even though I haven't worked there for years. I still get a county retirement check. We decided to buy a retirement house at Lake Tahoe, and as Grandpa said, he said, there's only one Lake Tahoe. You'll never go wrong buying a house at Lake Tahoe. So we bought the house on Carnelian, and that's turned out to be a really good investment.
So while I was working with Paul Levine and getting Ranco going, Gloria decided she wanted to move from Glendale to Laguna Niguel to get out of the smog area.
My name is Bishop Frank Jimkowski. Jeanette and I have known Bishop Randy and Gloria for about 20 years now. We first met them when we moved to St. Timothy's. He was a lector at the church at that time, and we joined a few groups together, one of which was a prayer group.
Gloria and I were then very active. We were becoming very active at St. Timothy's Church in Laguna Niguel. And I had met Frank and Jeanette Drumkowski and got involved in the charismatic movement with them. And I decided I'd read the Bible every day when I was going on the train. And I did that for about 8 years. I learned a lot of things in the Bible that I hadn't been taught before because I got to read them myself, and I began to understand things that I had not really comprehended before. And so I learned a lot in those experiences that I had with Father Bruce and the prayer group, and as I progressed in this particular part of my life, I began to say, you know, I really always wanted to kind of be an evangelist, but I didn't know how I was going to do it.
And then, of course, he always wanted to be a priest, and I think he would like to be a father. And he found a way of doing both in this other group.
And then one day Gloria and I were visiting Lucille and Jasper, and Lucille had been reading on a newspaper, you can be married and be a priest. And she says, why don't you look into this, Randy? You always want to be a priest. I said, well, Ma, no, I don't know about that. She says, well, so you always want to be a priest. She says, you can be married and be a priest. She says, why don't you look into it? Well, I was working with Levine, and I told Paul Levine about it, and Paul Levine says, well, why don't you look into it? He says, you always wanted to do something like that. It'd be a good idea. Why don't you look into that? I said, well, I'm going to have to go back to Pennsylvania to visit with the bishop of that group. And he's, be my guest. Take as long as you need. He even paid for my trip. And so I went back there and visited the Bishop Luther, and we had a 5-day meeting. I questioned Bishop Luther in every way I possibly could, and I realized that he was very, very legitimate. And the legitimacy of his, of course, with having been a Roman Catholic all of my life, I was very interested in having Roman Catholic lines of succession. Well, he not only had Roman Catholic lines of succession, but he had Greek Orthodox lines of succession and Anglican lines of succession, as well as Russian Orthodox lines. I came back to Frank and I told him what was going on. And Frank was very, very interested in it because he'd always wanted to be a priest too. So he, of course, being an engineer that he is, he had to make a really deep study of the whole thing. You know.
Bishop Randy came to me one day and said that he had found a group that he was very interested in that would ordain married men into the priesthood. Since he had some 8 years in the Jesuit seminary, he was very interested, and he asked for my opinion. I expressed my opinion saying, you could be excommunicated. And he said, well, I'd like you to review these materials. So I took the materials, reviewed them, and researched them extensively. And the more I got into the materials, the more I found this was a legitimate, valid group of men who wanted to bring married men into their priesthood. So we ended up both joining.
I started the study program with WOCA, with Western Orthodox Church of America in 1987, and completed it in 1989. In July of 1989, we were ordained deacons.
We were ordained in 89 to the diaconate and the priesthood.
In September of 1989, I went to Altoona, and Bishop Luther asked me if I'd like to be ordained a priest while I was there, because he was going to be doing an ordination of a number of priests that were all prepared to be priests from various areas of the country.
And in 1993, we both were consecrated as bishops in the American Catholic Church.
I'm forgiven because you were forsaken. I'm accepted, you were condemned. And I'm alive and well, your spirit is within me, because you died and rose again. I'm forgiven because you were forsaken. I'm accepted, you were condemned. I'm alive and well, your spirit is within me, because you died and rose again. Amazing love, how can it be that you, my King, should die for me? Amazing love, and I know it's true, and it's my joy to honor you in all I do, to honor you.
I didn't know when I became a priest in 1989. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. The only thing that I really wanted to do was become an evangelist. But what happened is in 1989, Lucille had a stroke, which you all know about, and she was at the Tri-Cities Hospital, and it was Easter Sunday. I was there visiting her, and the hospital was very distraught because the chaplain that was supposed to be doing services there on Easter Sunday didn't come. And I said, well, if you need services done, I'll do a service for you for Easter Sunday. I think it was Saturday before Easter Sunday. And they said, well, that'll be wonderful. So I went and did a service there on Easter Sunday for them. And then I proceeded to do services there for 3 or 4 or 5 Sundays after that. And Lucille was then moved to nursing home, and finally she's moved to Rancho Bernardo. And I started to do services at Rancho Bernardo every Sunday. As long as Lucille lived there, I did services every Sunday there. And not only did I do services there, but believe it or not, I was still running the prayer group at St. Timothy's, even though I was ordained a priest in the Western Orthodox Church of America. Father Bruce and I were really very, very good friends. I mentioned to you that God works in our lives in ways that we don't know sometimes. But God was working in my life and told me, no, I don't want you to be an evangelist. I want you to be a chaplain. I want you to work with people that are really hurting. They're older people. Nobody cares about them anymore. So I went and did Palm Terrace every week for years. As long as we lived in Laguna Niguel, I did services at Palm Terrace. And I also did services at Rancho Bernardo as long as Lucille lived. And after she died, I still did services there for almost a year, Rancho Bernardo. And then there was another place in Saddleback, which was also had a nursing home by the Saddleback Hospital, that asked me to do services there.
My name is Shari McComb. I'm a friend of Bishop Randy, a grateful friend, and I'll tell you why. Well, first of all, my atheist mother called me one day from Palm Terrace and told me that she accidentally went in the room where this bishop was speaking and she liked the service. She invited me to come the next week, and I gladly came. And it was wonderful. He had beautiful music before we came in. He did a regular mass, but his personal stories, homily, was awesome. And he got my attention even more by the way he related to the people. A lot of the people there were in wheelchairs. This is an assisted living place. And he would talk to them, touch them. Even in his talk from the pulpit, he would say, something about their pains, their loneliness during the week, and it was really special.
Shari McComb used to come to services on Sunday, and she had been converted from Judaism to become Seventh-day Adventist, and her mother was at this hospital at Palm Terrace. She was in the nursing wing of it.
Time passed after that. She moved and she got older, and one day she was on her deathbed. The hospice people were already there and she was miserable. She wanted to die, but she wasn't dying. Time was going on and she wasn't dying. And I prayed, what is she alive for? What shall we do? And so I called Bishop Randy. That's what I got out of my prayers.
I happened to have been in the area at the time, so I went in to see her. And I spent about an hour and a half with Shari's mother.
And I brought him to her room, and he said something that I'll never forget. She'll never forget, because he said, "You are forgiven." And her face was like, her face just showed that she was startled and she relaxed. And he went on to baptize her. And this was awesome because my Jewish mother. And the next 2 weeks, my mother and I had an amazing time because she was no longer demanding. She was no longer impatient. She just said, well, whenever Jesus wants me, that's when I'll go. And we could talk about faith and love and hope. And thank you, Bishop Randy.
And I did it as long as I could until I was January of this year. I decided to retire from being a chaplain for nursing homes and retirement homes. I love the work. I saw a lot of wonderful things happen in those years that I did that, from 1989 until January of this year. There were people whose hands I held when nobody was there. The families weren't there. They weren't there. I was there, holding their hands, saying, it's okay. You can go. It's okay.
I want to thank him, first of all, for myself and the experiences that we've had together and shared together. But I want to thank him in the name of the people that he's ministered to, the hundreds of people he's ministered to at Palm Terrace, the Arbor, and other places. In their name, I thank him. But I also want to thank him for helping us both to realize the lifelong experience that we've always wanted, and that was to be a priest, each of us to be a priest. He has helped us both to fulfill that. And I want to wish him a happy birthday today. I'm not going to sing happy birthday, but instead I will give him the words to a birthday song that we normally sing in our Polish background. The name of the song is called 100 lat. The words are 100 lat, 100 lat, nie żyje nam. The translation is 100 years, 100 years. May you live to be 100 years. Bishop Randy, you'll do it. So in closing, I'd like to ask a blessing on you and all the people seeing this. I want to pray first Aaron's blessing, that the Lord bless you and keep you, that the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you, that the Lord turn his face to you and grant you his peace, his shalom. And may the blessings of Almighty God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit descend upon you and remain with you forever and ever. Amen.
That's my story.
Remember me in a Bible cracked and faded by the years. Remember me in a sanctuary filled with silent prayer. And age to age and heart to heart, bound by grace and peace. Child of wonder, child of God, I've remembered you. Remember me. Remember me when the color of a sunset fills the sky. Remember me when you pray and tears of joy fall from your eyes. And age to age and heart to heart, bound by grace and peace. Child of wonder, child of God, I've remembered you. Remember me. Remember me when the children leave their Sunday school with smiles. Remember me when they're old enough to teach, old enough to preach, old enough to leave. And age to age and heart to heart, bound by grace and peace. remember me.
It's raining heart to heart, tell the wonder child of God.
It's the song of the redeemed, rising from the African plain. It's the song of the forgiven, drowning out the Amazon rain. The song of Asian believers, filled with God's holy fire. It's every tribe, every tongue, every nation, a love song born of a grateful choir. It's all God's children singing glory, glory, hallelujah, He reigns, He reigns. It's all God's children singing glory, glory, hallelujah, He reigns, He reigns.
Dearest Randolph, I feel you're going to have an 80th birthday. I can remember the day you were born. I went in and didn't even know I was going to have a baby brother, and there you were, on the bed in our living room at Tombstone. We have had so many happy times, troubled times too, but we have had a lot of happy times. Even when we were separated for so many years by our families and all, we have always loved one another and tried to keep in touch. So on your birthday, I am wishing you a very, very happy birthday, and may you celebrate very many more. I love you, darling.
I remember when he was going to marry her, and I remember she was very young. And I said to him, "He's awfully young, Randy."
Pool that was in the old gymnasium. As a matter of fact, it was skinny dip. And then they put us up overnight here in Mobley Hall. So my room is up there, and it's more or less there where we stayed those two summers for just one night, I guess. But it's curious how your life comes full circle, you know.
Skinny dipped in the pool. So you were saying that Randy and the crew skinny dipped in the pool?
Years went winging by since she caressed me in her arms and granted me a kiss. With tender care she placed me to her breast, one babe for whom her life she would dismiss. Years went winging by since she caressed me in her arms and granted me a kiss. The years went winging by since she caressed me in her arms and granted me a kiss. With tender care she placed me to her breast, one babe for whom her life she would dismiss. On my breast, there rests a pearl, priceless as pearl. To me this grace the Lord has leased, so that some blessed day may I dress her back to God, as Jesuit and priest, the head of his family.
I really think that the reason our friendship was so solid, that it was founded on a basis of we don't discuss religion or politics, and we stayed an even course. I love you very much.
I think that's funny. Is it true?
Yeah, it's true.
And knowing who Bishop Randy is, sometimes he can be a very driven person. He can even be a little opinionated from time.
Well, one day there were surprises too, and one day his son Christopher came, beautiful looking guy, and he played music that was astounding.
He reigns. All God's children singing glory.